Welcome back to Sports with a Z and a T. I am Bryce Taylor alongside Taylor Lattimore. We are, of course, presented by Godzilla Media, sponsored by Mohawk Honda, John Stone Supply in Detroit, and Saving Face Barbershop up in Saratoga Springs. This is the big episode. We were talking about last week. We've been hyping up since we've took our little summer hiatus. This is the episode of the year. It's Taylor and I's favorite episode to record personally. And it's probably the one that has the longest longevity for our listeners to enjoy pretty much for the entire month of August and first week and a half of September. And that would be our 2022 Fantasy Football Special, where we break down literally everything you need to know going into your draft. Now, we're not going to go player by player because that's exhausting. But we're here to go through each position. We go off PPR. I mean, if you go and do a non-PPR league, I'm happy that you're happy, but you are one sick, twisted individual because that's not normal. So we base all our rankings off PPR, half-point PPR, and we go through, and we did this episode last year. We got a lot of great reviews on it. We go through the position, and, you know, we're not going to do like a mock draft type deal. I think that's kind of cliche, and quite frankly, hard to do with two people. But we're going to look at average draft picks, look who could slip in the first round, what could be your process, whether you be in the high end of the first round, picks 1, 2, 3, or even in the back end of, 10, 11, 12, or if you're like us in the Godzilla Media League and you're 14, 15, 16, that's in itself a whole other animal that is pretty rough. If you get 16, God bless you. I don't even know if there's officially going to be 16 teams this year. Goss hasn't really said anything.
I mean, if you look into it and you look at the number of teams like in our league currently right now, I think there's
still 16. Okay. Well, I look very much forward to defending that crown, and thank you guys for changing the draft from August 19th to
Where's
September
your belt?
1st. Oh, my belt. Oh, I got to get my belt.
You're still unprepared.
I know.
This kid's out here. He's the champion right now, and he doesn't even have his belt on.
I have the
there
belt.
It goes. Okay.
I have the belt. And I have Otis. Otis is down here. So Otis's army reigns supreme. I might
have Otis pick your lineup this year.
No, I should not do that. I should not do that because if it's anything like his bracket choices, it won't end very well.
He had a hot streak for like 3 games.
And with the first pick of the 22 fantasy football draft, Otis's Empire selects Brandon McManus, kicker, Denver Broncos.
Defense.
Great. Awesome. Fantastic. But no, this really is it's really our favorite episode to do. I mean, we could do it for 5 hours if we really wanted to, but we don't simply have 5 hours. That's just ridiculous to ask of anybody. So welcome to the 2022 Fantasy Football Special. And let's dive into our first position, Taylor. And it's not the most popular position. And a lot of people kind of waver on their thought process when it comes to this position. That's the quarterback. You got some people that go and I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes with the first overall pick, and you're not going to stop me. I'm going to take Kyler Murray in the second round. You're not going to stop me. And then there's people that are fine with taking the likes of, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Daniel Jones,
Some people, I know at least one person that listens to our podcast that I think I mentioned it last year, and I'll keep mentioning it because he's an anomaly. He almost prefers to stream quarterbacks week to week. So he'll take a quarterback. He'll literally wait until the very last round or something to pick a quarterback.
I'm not at that point. I'm not at that point where I'll ignore the position. But, you have the likes. Let's be clear. Josh Allen's the number 1 quarterback probably going into fantasy this year. Patrick Mahomes is up there. There's a clear top 4. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Lamar Jackson. We're not here to talk about those guys because those are kind of duh. Now, where you go and take your quarterback, look, that's totally up to you. I typically, now, one of my big leagues, it's 2 quarterback. And when it's 2
that's a whole different
quarterback,
ballgame.
that changes. Look, I'm picking a quarterback in the second round. I mean, that if you're lucky that the quarterbacks don't start going like 6, 7, 8, 9, because that's just how it is. Plus, it's a keeper, so you kind of have to change your strategy based on who you're keeping. But we're going to treat this as, this is your 1 quarterback standard format league. And let's look at these quarterbacks. I mean, look, Josh Allen, I think the consensus pick number 1 overall quarterback here. You have Patrick Mahomes, which I'm kind of fading a little bit. And now when I say fade Patrick Mahomes, look, Patrick Mahomes is going to be Patrick Mahomes. But I am not looking at a quarterback who is basically in a transition year. Let's be honest. This offense is in transition. When you look at Patrick Mahomes, he is going ADP pick 47. So do the math there, folks. That's if you're in a 12-team league, that's early 4th round, which is okay. I mean, that's okay. But I'm still not – if that's how long the quarterbacks are going to go, I'm not taking him there. Like, you could get so much value at other positions if Josh Allen is ADP 31, Patrick Mahomes is ADP 47, Justin Herbert is ADP 45. Those 3 guys, let someone else reach for them. Go and grab your wide receiver 2 or your RB2 or your RB. I mean, hey, if you hold off on running back, we're going to get to the running back position here later on. But if that's your first running back, I mean, that's a possibility.
The no running back strategy.
Running back strategy. And we're going to get to that because it was popular in our league last year. But I want to look at the guys after Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Justin Herbert. Because if you see those guys go in the 3rd or 4th round, it is what it is, right? Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Somebody's going to do it. It happens every year. Honestly, most leagues, unless you're full of true fantasy psychopaths, probably these guys are going in the 2nd and 3rd round. Somebody's going to reach.
The third round, someone will definitely go after a Josh Allen.
So when you're looking at it like that, so let's look at these rankings afterwards, because this is where it gets interesting. ESPN is the rankings that we're going to go off of So for our listeners, that's the list that we're looking off of. Do I agree with ESPN? No, I do not. But that's the rankings we're going to go with.
But also we're getting the ADP, which, that's what the consensus pick of everyone who's drafting right now. So, I mean, regardless of their rankings here, we're also just going to be giving you like their ADP. And so that's just facts. Like, that's just numbers that are being generated.
That's where they're going. Average
drafting now.
It's an average.
Like, as we speak. Yeah.
It's an average.
Exactly.
When you look at ESPN's ranking, you have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. Lamar Jackson is 4. Now, Lamar Jackson's intriguing to me, and we're going to get to him in a second, but I'm going to get to the top 10 here. Kyler Murray's 5. Jalen Hurts is 6. Joe Burrow is 7. Tom Brady is 8. Russell Wilson is 9. And Dak Prescott is 10, rounding out the top 10. Now, Taylor, when you're looking at this top 10, I mean, there's obviously some guys here that you're going to agree with, not agree with. I mean, when you're looking at price points here, when it comes to their ADP, there's some that are going to be more appealing than others. I think I know where you're going to go with this one, but outside of the obvious top 3, who are you really trying to zone in on here? And I think I know who you're going with. And
is it someone you're going to love? Because
probably. Because it's probably my answer too.
It's because it's Jalen Hurts. If I can get Jalen Hurts, especially at a lower ADP than, say, the 4th, or like if I can get him in the 6th round, like, or even the 5th round, like I might pull the trigger on him then.
ADP is 65.3. So
yeah. So I mean, he's a guy who I had him last year in like I think 2 of my leagues, and because of the rushing upside, he was the number 1 by average rushing quarterback in the league last year. And so he's rushing the most. And that gives you, we all know the Eagles offense, how it changed last year and how it became a run-focused team. Now you have a lot of running backs in the mix there, but having a quarterback who can one, throw it, or be a red zone threat to get those short run QB sneak kind of like, or QB draw kind of plays, where you're getting it at the goal line and getting touchdowns that way. I mean, and now you add in AJ Brown, who's his run after catch is a monster. So he will catch the ball and just generate more yards for Jalen Hurts. Another year in this offense, he has a great roster around him. The Eagles do have a great roster, and they added offensive weapons. And yeah, he's going to be a very good QB, and I think he could easily be the number one QB in fantasy next year. I think that's his ceiling.
I'm right there with you. And if he can improve from the pocket, the Eagles will throw a lot more this year. And they have the strong group of receivers, like you had mentioned, to back it up, along with probably the best offensive line in football. That's important. When you look at the weapons, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Kez Watkins, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders out of the backfield. You also have Kenny Gainwell out of the backfield, and they use Hurts a lot with his legs. I think that's an important asset to remember here. When you're looking at a fantasy quarterback, look, the guys like, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott that don't really use their legs, but are still very, very good from the pocket. They're going to get their points. Mm-hmm. But ideally, when you're looking at a fantasy quarterback, you want somebody that is a dual threat. That's why Kyler Murray now is Kyler Murray one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. His contract says so. Others will disagree. But the reason Kyler Murray goes so high in, drafts is because he runs. Same with Lamar.
It adds so much more to your range of outcomes. Like when you're going into a game, his floor, these guys' floor, like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, their floor is lower than most quarterbacks because regardless of how they do when they're throwing the ball, there's always the threat of them running the ball and getting yardage and points that way. So it's evens out. So even when they have they have a bad throwing game, yeah, but they still got 15 points, 17 points. Or something like that, because they're rushing, and that's why Jalen Hurts is because he rushes so often, and I'm sure Lamar Jackson will also Lamar Jackson could easily also be the number one quarterback because he runs so often and he has such legs on him, and especially if that offense stays healthy, he could be a guy who we're looking at next year as the number one quarterback overall. But it's also why Josh Allen is so high up there too, because Josh Allen rushes as well, and he throws from the pocket with ease. So it's hard. Any of those top guys I'd be happy with.
Well, yes, of course. And when I look at these quarterbacks and the quarterbacks that I'm going to mention, it may not necessarily be the guys that I rank 1, 2, and 3. But I'm looking at the value and where I could get them. And that is where I calculate them. Like, look, Josh Allen's probably going to be the best quarterback this year fantasy wise. You have to spend a second or third round pick. That's not what I want to do. So when I I think Jalen is going to be great. He's number one on my board as well when it comes to his average draft pick. He is going to be a little pricey if you're willing to take a 5th round or an early 6th round snag at him. I think it would be worth it. I mean, if you have to take some risks if you want to win a fantasy league, and taking a risk with Jalen Hurts, I say risk, but you're probably leaving Russell Wilson or a Dak Prescott, a Lamar Jackson or a Kyler Murray possibly on the board to get a Jalen Hurts. That's the conversation that we're in. So he's going to be pricey, but you look at what he has done. He's kind of that cheat code that we talked about, where he, even on bad passing games, will still get you 20 points because of his legs. There's clear signs that he's going to grow in the passing game. And really, I think the ceiling is, like you said,
floor.
A top.
The ceiling is the roof.
The ceiling is the roof, as the great Michael Jordan would say. But the ceiling is that 1, 2, 3 slot. I mean, that's how good he was last year. You got to remember, before he got hurt in week 11 with the hamstring, missed that game the next following week against the Jets when Gardner Minshew played, he was QB1. Jalen Hurts was QB1 through 11 weeks last year. So he has that potential. Another guy I want to bring out to you, everybody's gaga over Joe Burrow. Justin Herbert, but I'm going Joe Burrow. I think they're very similar in style, and he's been stable with an ADP between 62 and 67, which is actually up 2 to 3 picks from earlier in the year when I looked. He's going to be a star this year. He's proven to be one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. He hasn't had his best season and has probably the best wide receiver trio in the league. This team throws the football a lot. Joe Burrow had a heck of a year last year. And if you're looking at trying to get a guy like Justin Herbert, why not wait 2 or 3 more rounds and get a guy like Joe Burrow, who, to be honest with you, is not going to be the difference of you winning or losing your fantasy games week in and week out. Herbert may get 32 and Burrow may get 28. But guess what? Burrow is going to outplay Herbert in weeks as well. I think they're very close and not enough people are talking about because they play very similarly.
See, the thing about the quarterbacks for me is any of those top guys, I feel like from week to week is someone you set and forget. So
yep, absolutely.
If you all the way down to like through Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Dak Prescott, even Stafford and Rodgers. That's like as far as I'd say is like so like 12. If you have one of the top 12 quarterbacks, then I think you feel okay with starting them week to week, regardless of opponent. You're not worried about it. After that, that's when you start looking into, matchups, and you may have 2 that you're like, you go between. Maybe not like Derek Carr. I think Derek Carr, you probably trust him, but he's still going to have some dud games. But you're going to live with that because you're not going to probably start anyone over Derek Carr unless he has a horrendous season, especially with Devontae Adams now. It should be much easier for Carr to move the football. But the thing is, where you're taking them is the thing. Like you were saying, like the value. So and just like you do, I think we wait on quarterbacks. So if there's
you and I have very similar philosophies.
If there's a Jalen Hurts in round like 5, 6, then and in a 16-team league, I don't know if that's possible with the way some people draft and how aggressive some people are with quarterbacks sometimes. I don't know that if you have like the 16 pick and you come around and again you're picking, way down the line, whether you're going to be able to get one of these top guys. So my question to you is, outside of that top 12, who do you like?
So outside of the top 12, as in, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Herbert, Murray, Hurts, Burrow, Brady, Wilson, Dak, Stafford, and Rodgers.
Yes. And I guess throw in Derek Carr in there too.
Throw in Derek Carr because that was one of the guys. That he's one of the guys that I would like there. So if you're looking at a flyer guy, there's 2 guys that I'm going to point out. Trey Lance is one of them.
He's had a lot of hype.
I love the physical tools, drips with talent. He reminds me of what Jalen Hurts brings to the table.
Yeah.
And at a cheaper value, he can have major flaws and still produce, which is something that you kind of want to look at a quarterback.
The ball.
And he's there's no threat that he's going to be benched for Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Jimmy Garoppolo is not going to play another game in a Niners uniform, so don't worry about that. Do keep in mind that you are going to have to go through growing pains with Trey Lance. I'm sure there's going to be that game where he gets you 5 to 6 points. Trey Lance should not be your only quarterback, but I think the risk reward on that is worth it. I think Trey Lance is a guy to take a look at there. And then the other guy that I'm looking at now, he's a flyer. Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson of the Jets. Not a priority ad, but his environment is good and his talent is high end. This is a make or break year for Zach Wilson. And if you're looking at fantasy value, you're not going to have to take a high pick at all to get Zach Wilson. Possibly it could be your last pick. But let me tell you something. Zach Wilson behind a offensive line that, yes, they lost Becton, but just signed Dwayne Brown, who I think is an upgrade over Becton anyway. You have Breece Hall at running back. You just drafted Wilson to pair with Elijah Moore. You have a healthy Corey Davis. You brought in 2 tight ends in Conklin and Uzama. This Jets offense is sneaky. And Zach Wilson, it's kind of put up or shut up even in year 2. if you're looking at and look at game script, are you expecting the Jets to be that good this year? Probably not. They're going to be throwing the football. They're going to be throwing the football. Zach Wilson's also somewhat mobile. Take a flyer on Zach Wilson. Now, I'm going bottom of the barrel. I'm not saying Zach Wilson's my quarterback. Yeah. I mean, I just listed a bunch of quarterbacks I'd rather have before I even threw out that thought. But if you're down,
yeah, we went through the first 14 quarterbacks before we even.
But hear me out. Like if you're looking at like Kirk Cousins, who might be in a favorable environment this year, a more friendly game plan, Tua, Carson Wentz, Mac Jones, Jared Goff, Zach Wilson, Danny Dimes. I mean, Zach Wilson's probably one of the better options out of that group.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to have a Jets,
you're not taking a flyer. You're not taking a flyer on Justin Fields this year. That team is horrendously terrible. You're not taking a flyer on Jared Goff. You're not taking a flyer on Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky. I mean,
right, let me throw out two names for you then. Okay. In this back half that I think could be something. Let's start with Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
Jameis Winston. Healthy. Yeah, if Jameis Winston, he is questionable right now. He's dealing with some. He's day to day with a knee, foot, something or other. But if he can stay healthy, he's getting Michael Thomas back, and reportedly from camp, Michael Thomas looks great. Now it is camp. Who knows? They like to exaggerate, but they say he looked great. And since he never really was the downhill guy, like he was more like they call him the slant guy because he runs those quick slants and he's just a good route runner. So I'm assuming that he will still retain a lot of that through this injury. So I think he can be productive. I don't think he's going to have the best season of his career, but nonetheless, with that paired with Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, all of that put together,
Michael Thomas being back.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, Michael Thomas. And yeah, like all of that put together, that's a lot of weapons.
Might be suspended for 6 games.
Yeah, but that might not happen this year. That might happen later in the year. We don't know how that's going to go down. So, I mean, even if he doesn't have Kamara, that's still a lot of weapons for Jameis Winston, who doesn't need a lot of weapons to, chuck it for 4,000 yards in a season. Hopefully he doesn't throw 30 interceptions.
I was going to say, he'll throw you 30 touchdowns, but he'll throw 30 interceptions too. So.
Hopefully he has a more efficient year, but I do think that he could be a guy that you could roll with. And then the other guy I want to point out is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is on a much better offense, I think, than he was last year. He has an upgraded offensive line. He has the best running back in the league, or one of them. Better running game than he's had since, he had his MVP year, where he was running play action passes, like it was nobody's business. That's what he's going to do with the Colts. They're going to establish the run game. Then they're going to start throwing it. Pittman's going to have a better year. I think he's going to feed Pittman a lot. And I think that yes, he can. Yes, he can. How many Falcons games did you watch?
The first one when the Eagles beat him. He was
terrible. Yeah. So one on a terrible team with a terrible offensive line and a terrible running game and a terrible defense. Yeah. So he's on a new team and it's a much better situation all around. And you cannot deny that. That's undeniable that he's in a better situation.
It's not a better situation than the Falcons. That doesn't mean he's going to be good.
I think he will be better just because of that. He wouldn't even have to throw it as much. Like if he's just throwing checks down.
But for fantasy,
Taylor, that'll work.
But for fantasy, check down Charlie doesn't exactly pay off.
No, but when you give it to Jonathan Taylor, check down Charlie, he takes it 70 yards to the house. All I'm saying is if you're in that back area, I'd much rather have him over Mac Jones or even probably Zach Wilson, and definitely over Carson Wentz. Don't get me started. And Baker Mayfield even.
The thing about
Daniel Jones, he looks awful. Giants camp is a mess, but he'll probably get some rushing yards.
The Giants are the gift that keeps on giving. Like as an Eagles fan, between Washington, New York, and Dallas, it's just like sitting here like, I mean, which one's going to fuck up today? I mean, it's been beautiful to watch this offseason. I mean, the Eagles are going to run away with the NFC East. But that's for another episode, Bryce. That's another episode. This is fantasy. But I think overall everybody gets the idea of what we are talking about when it comes to value with the quarterback, that you don't need a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert to be successful. No. It's different in 2 quarterback leagues. Don't get me wrong. You probably want one of those guys in 2 quarterback leagues. But 1 quarterback league, the quarterback position is not as detrimental to your lineup. You can survive with one of those middle tier, back end tier type guys. Before we head to our next position, I do want to remind our listeners that we are sponsored by Mohawk Honda. And at Mohawk Honda, the team can find what you're looking for by searching their lot or the entire Eastern Seaboard just for you. But the real opportunity for you right now is either trading in or selling your vehicle. Mohawk Honda buy cars, and in some cases, you may be able to sell it for more than you paid for it. The supply chain is still facing those challenges, as we all know, which creates a selling opportunity for you. And as always, the team at Mohawk Honda will make that buying and selling experience very easy. And you know them as Cars with Kern, Trust Trav Landry, Louis the VIP Man Morales, C-Mac Let's Do a Deal McKenna, Drive with the Anna Cows, or just go and talk to the leader in charge, General Manager Greg Johnson. And at Mohawk Honda on Freeman's Bridge Road in Scotia, they want to buy your car, and they always go out of their way to please you. Let's go to the running backs, Taylor, because I think this is the position that's becoming more controversial than in years past. And I'm just going to be quite frank with you. And I hate to say it because, but as the game of football changes, so does philosophies in fantasy. You have to kind of cater to what's going on in the game. And I hate to say it, but I'm a little less definitive at running back this year than in years past. I'm decisive when it comes to like my player targets and avoids. I know the guys I want, and I know the guys I'm wanting to avoid. But I think this year, out of most, I'm a little more flexible at running back this year at the very top. And there seems to be a trend out there. A lot of guys are going to snag one elite running back to anchor their group, and they're going to ignore the position for 4 or 5 picks and then come back to it. Mm-hmm. That could work, certainly. But I actually have a different approach this year than in years past. And I don't like saying this on the show because I'm worried that there are people that are going to be listening. And I know you're listening and you're in our league. I still want to beat you. But my approach this year is actually to anchor wide receivers. I am prioritizing the wide receiver position more than the running backs. And of course, you do need that young stud running back, or at least that major stallion type guy still in his prime, so that you can, plug and forget, except for, the bye week. So you're still looking at your first 2 picks, and one of them is going to be a running back. That's my opinion. Now, is it going to be the first or the second round? That's the key. But it depends on where you are too. Like if you have the absolute ability to get Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey, probably can't pass that up. There are strong options at the top of the board. But there's these elite options at wide receiver that, I don't know if you've heard this term before. I like to use this term. A couple people that I follow use this term, but the Magnificent 7 at wide receiver that we're going to get to next year, there's a Magnificent 7 that I like to coin at the top of the board this year. And I'll get to that, when we get to the wide receiver. This is the running back spot, but I'm kind of just teeing it up for everybody. Teasing, as you will. But there's a Magnificent 7 that I think is hammer wide receiver ones this year. That would be 7 wide receivers. Now, if you're in a 12-team league, think about it. Do the math. More wide receivers than running backs. 16 team, that's going to be a little different. That draft's going to go differently, and I don't really know my plan yet. I need to see my pick first. But the philosophy is changing, and that's opening up a lot of different avenues when it comes to running backs, and that is what we're here to talk about. Let's look at the PPR running back board, Taylor, and obviously per ESPN rankings, you have Jonathan Taylor at number 1. He seems to be the consensus number one overall pick this year. If I happen to get the number one overall pick, yeah, Jonathan Taylor is the guy.
And I'm gonna pick him if I get the number one pick.
You're gonna pick him wherever you are if he's even somehow
if he's available. Hell yeah! Are you kidding?
Christian McCaffrey is number 2, Austin Eckler 3, Derrick Henry 4, Najee Harris 5, Dalvin Cook 6, Joe Mixon 7, DeAndre Swift 8, Alvin Kamara is cautiously 9. That could change, obviously, especially if he's suspended. Leonard Fournette is 10, Javonte Williams 11, Aaron Jones 12, Nick Chubb 13, James Conner 14, Cam Akers 15, Saquon Barkley 16, David Montgomery 17, Ezekiel Elliott is 18, Antonio Gibson is 19, and Josh Jacobs is 20. So I just gave you the top 20 here. And when you look at, 12-team PPR, there's a lot to digest here, and it depends on where you are in the draft. If you're top heavy, you're probably taking a Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor. But if you're in the middle round, that's where it starts to get interesting. Like, there are several very high-end players to be leery of at a cost. One of them being McCaffrey, because of the injury woes. And I get it. I mean, the talent is the talent, so you might not deny it. But if you've been burned by McCaffrey, like some of us on this podcast have. I had McCaffrey in a league last year. Taylor had him in ours. Derrick Henry, I'm starting to get skeptical of. Look, eventually a very big, large human being like Derrick Henry is going to break down. So when are the wheels going to come off? Correct. And I'm still skeptical about Austin Eckler at an ADP of 6.7, despite the awesome year last year. I get skeptical of that. So when you're looking at Jonathan Taylor, excluding him, because who, you're taking number one overall 100% of the time. There are a couple other running backs that you should be maybe targeting in round 1. If you're not going wide receiver, Taylor, who would they be?
All right. So my piece on Christian McCaffrey is, if he's available to you 2, 3, 4, you should probably take it. I don't know if I personally will, because of the fact that he's burned me twice now, because I have him in 2 different leagues.
There's the burn factor. Some people are just not touching it.
But I am okay with the fact that if I don't take him and someone else takes him and he goes off, I can live with the fact that I knew that was the risk that I was taking, because I just don't want to deal with the other end, because I'd rather have someone who will play than a guy who might play and be the best. Christian McCaffrey is the best when he plays. He is the best. Like, it is not even close. He is the best when he plays. But I will not be taking him. Someone else can take him, unless I get him at 5. I mean, 5 is way too low. If he's still there at 5, and I'm probably going to take him, because that's value there, is because I made it all the way to 5 and he was still there. So yeah, I'm going to take him. But outside of Jonathan Taylor, because Jonathan Taylor, he may not be number 1, but he's probably going to be top 5. I'll guarantee you that. Unless he gets injured. God forbid. Knock on all the wood. I like Austin Eckler. I'm actually pretty high on him. Okay. I think
so we differentiate there.
Yeah, the dynamic action that the Chargers have, and there's so many weapons around, and Justin Herbert is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I just think that they're going to be a high-powered offense always, and as long as he's involved, which he will be, unless he, knock on wood, gets injured, as long as he stays healthy, he will be a big part of that offense. I don't see numbers dropping very much at all. I still think he'll be a threat to get those rushing touchdowns. He'll be a threat for receiving touchdowns. He will be a threat for receiving yards and rushing yards. He does it all. And I really think that his floor is so low, I think, or so high, that I think that he's a safe bet. You take him. He might not be the number 1 running back overall, but he's a guy that you can set every week and not think about it. Outside of that, I do agree with you that Derrick Henry is probably going to start breaking down. Mm-hmm. He already is, and he has an insane workload, and he's an enormous human being that just bangs into people. So I just think at some point he's going to have to slow down. But on the other hand, if you're willing to take a risk, he is, the centerpiece of the Tennessee offense.
The thing is, I've always I've always I've always avoided Derrick Henry. I'd rather get burned elsewhere. I don't know what it is. I've had Derrick Henry once, and it was feast or famine. But I mean, look, Derrick Henry's definitely one of those guys. If they fall out of game script, he could be giving you 6 points instead of 42. So you have to go with the roller coaster ride there.
And then next up, you got like Najee Harris, who I do like, except that Pittsburgh's offense is not going to be good. They're going to be probably playing from behind. Their defense is still pretty good, so maybe they won't be playing it so far behind. But you got to think that offense is not going to be able to put up a bunch of points depending on
the thing with Najee Harris is his ADP is 7. He just turned 24. He had 385 touches last year, and the offense should be. And I mean, it's not saying a lot, but should be ascending with Ben Roethlisberger gone, and you have a pair of young, athletic quarterbacks. You don't know what Trubisky's going to bring. Remains to be seen. You know, and Kenny Pickett.
Trubisky has been good at times.
But in my opinion, Najee Harris is kind of one of those guys that he's game script. He doesn't need game script, and he's not going to lose out on touches because the Steelers are down. He is he is out there every
he catches the ball too.
Down. I think Najee Harris is in for a big year. I'm high on him.
I'm relatively high at him. I like him at like 6. I think that's a good spot for him. I wouldn't want you to reach for him at number 1. He is like in that young range where he could be like a number 1 running back type guy if he has a great season. I just like their offensive line is shit. He's going to get a ton of touches, which is great on the one hand, but he got a lot of touches last year, and, you know, wear and tear is a real thing. I don't think he's going to wear and tear. He's literally like, he's young as hell. So like, I don't think that's going to be a concern yet, but I don't have him as high. I have Austin Eckler higher than him personally. And then after that, DeAndre Swift is someone who's really interesting because of his receiving prowess. And the fact that he can catch a lot of passes and bring them in for touchdowns, as well as getting rushing touchdowns. And he's an essential part, I think, of that Detroit offense. And I think the Detroit offense will be a bit better. I think Detroit's not going to be a good team, but I think that they're going to compete just like they did last year. They competed pretty well. And they were always in games forcing the issue, putting up points, especially when they get down by a ton, but they always, clawed their way back. So even if they're playing from behind it, I don't think it really matters, especially when you have DeAndre Swift who can catch the ball as well out of the backfield. I do like DeAndre Swift. I'm pretty high on him.
I love DeAndre Swift this year. And if you're looking at, like, this is a guy to target in round 2 because he's going to be there. So if you go like heavy with the wide receiver, like you go with one of the Magnificent 7 that we're going to be talking about here when we get to the wide receivers, DeAndre Swift is a guy that I would look at. I mean, you worry if he can hold up with the small frame. He's one of the smaller guys, but he's bulked up. He's been really good 2 years running now. I had him last year, loved him, still love him. He averaged 6.7 targets per game pre-injury last year. That's a lot. He's also game script friendly as well because they were losing a shit ton and he was still involved a lot. He also had 10 carries inside the 10, which that's encouraging to see. They trusted him inside the 10-yard line. He's getting the goal line touches. You do have the presence of Jamal Williams. He had 6, but I think DeAndre Swift, I mean, Dan Campbell loves him. I think this is a guy that if the Lions are going to improve offensively, it starts with a healthy and involved DeAndre Swift. So I do like DeAndre Swift. We haven't mentioned him, and I think he's worth the mention. Joe Mixon. Mixon. He's just as good as a guy like Dalvin Cook. He's in a better offense, but his usage is just through the roof. He's a league-winning type running back who will be running behind a seriously upgraded offensive line. He's slipping around 2, and I don't get it. I don't know why people are so low on Joe Mixon. He has no backfield competition. Are you thinking Samaje Perine is going to take snaps away from Joe Mixon? Absolutely not. Joe Mixon is a guy that is a first-round running back. He's slipping to round 2.
His average 14.
14. So there you go. So if I'm
almost
at
15, basically.
So if I'm at like 10, 11, and I could get one of my Magnificent Seven and then turn around with Mixon. So like, what if I get like a Devontae Adams, Joe Mixon round 1-2 start? We're cooking with gas.
That's pretty
Right. Good. So I'm very surprised at where Joe Mixon is slipping. But again, it could be part because a lot of people are prioritizing wide receiver this year. So that could be part of it. Javonte Williams is another guy. His ADP is 18. Laughably low to me. Laughably low. I think this is a guy that is a perfect example from Jonathan Taylor. Did you not learn last year from Jonathan Taylor? The fantasy community is convinced Melvin Gordon's a major threat. Yes, he's relevant, but guess what? He just came up with another foot injury that they labeled not as major, but you can already see the cards. Like, Javonte's getting all the touches this summer. Melvin Gordon's aging. While Melvin is relevant, could get some extra run early, Javonte will play his way into a 70-30 split by the end of the year. I have no doubt about it. This guy is one of my dynasty guys. I am huge on him. That Broncos offense is going to be very, very, very good this year. And if you paid attention at all last year, it was very similar to what Jonathan Taylor did with the Colts in his rookie year. I know, Taylor, you can relate to that. You saw the upside. Year 2, he's going to explode. Look at Javonte Williams as another guy. You're not going to have to spend a first-round pick on him. But if you could get Javonte Williams in the second round, late second round, hell, potentially early third round, depending on how it goes, yeah, sign me up for that. And then, another guy, look, I'm giving all my secrets away, apparently. Aaron Jones, heavy offense, lost Devontae Adams. They're going to have to find somebody to give the ball to.
Aaron Jones, to me, is a no-brainer. Like, I don't understand why he's slipping to pick 23. I'm looking at the live ESPN live draft trends right now, and he's slipping to 23.9, so almost 24. Like, pick 24 for Aaron Jones. Who do you think that Aaron Rodgers is going to throw to? Like, obviously he's going to pepper his wide receivers, but like, he trusts Aaron Jones, and Aaron Jones is going to get a lot of run. Yes, AJ Dillon may eat into his rushing totals, but Aaron Jones might be used as a quasi wide receiver a lot of the time, as another weapon, because you lose Devontae Adams. That's a huge percentage of your targets that are just up in the air right now. And yes, some of the rookies that are coming in, or Alan Lazard, are gonna eat into that. But Aaron Jones is Aaron Jones. He's still one of the top running backs in the game. The only reason he wasn't higher in points last year is because he was injured a fair amount. Exactly. I had him on my team, so he was out for a few too many weeks, in my opinion. But it was, if he doesn't have that time missing, we could be talking about him,
top 5,
approaching on
top 5,
number 1. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor actually had one of the worst number 1 running back seasons in the last 10 years. Going back to Devontae Freeman had, I think, a lower one or comparable a couple years back on the Falcons, that MVP year or the year that they went to the Super Bowl. But Jonathan Taylor didn't have, and he had an amazing year, but it wasn't like a record-breaking year. It wasn't like a Christian McCaffrey scoring over 400 fantasy points type of year. It was good, but it wasn't that. He will be consistently good, but Aaron Jones could have been close to that, I think, if he didn't miss all that time. That's just my piece on him. And also, while I have you here, I do like Javonte Williams as well. That offense is going to be so much better. People are underrating how good Russell Wilson is going to make that offense. Russell Wilson is a top 5 to 10 quarterback, and he's coming onto this team that has a ready-made offense that has weapons all around. It's going to be so much better. And you're right. He is kind of like Jonathan Taylor, his rookie year, and then coming into this year. And last year, I know I did not tell you to draft Jonathan Taylor because I thought that Marlon Mack would eat into his touches. Guess what? I was dead wrong, and I'm not going to be wrong about this. I say draft Javonte Williams, screw Melvin Gordon. He's just there in case something happens.
Yeah, and you look at like round 3, 4 range running backs. Guy I'm really eyeing on, and Taylor, I know you're probably not as high on him as I am, but Breece Hall.
No,
I love
actually am.
Breece. I love Breece Hall. ADP right now is 38. And he reminds me of Javonte Williams of last year. He is going to be splitting some touches with Michael Carter. It's not going to be a full, full out Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley rookie year type breakout for him, but this is like a small buying opportunity that could wind up being a big one for him and could pay big dividends. This is a guy that could be a first round pick next year, in my opinion. He's that good. Another guy that, when you're looking at value, Travis Etienne, you got to remember he's healthy. James Robinson is going to factor as the season moves on, but I think Etienne is going to be involved a lot. And Taylor, I know you have some thoughts on probably the two guys that I mentioned, and then we'll get into some big time value picks.
Yeah, I want to throw some stats at you about Breece Hall and the Michael Carter situation. So we all know that Breece Hall has been really hyped. He's coming in. He's super athletic. He's a guy who's built to be a 3-down back, and he's preparing to be so in camp from what we hear with the Jets that they're preparing for him. Did you know that Michael Carter saw 0 targets on 3rd down last season?
I did not know that.
Well, Michael Carter saw 0 targets on 3rd down last season.
I do know that. I know that now.
Yes. And so when you look at that and you think, he's definitely not a 3rd down back if he's not getting any targets on 3rd down, unless of course it's like 3rd and inches or 3rd and 1 and they're trying to run it. But Hall has been a good receiver in his college days, and he's trying to be better. He earned a career high 44 targets last year, nearly 4 per game, and it was 63% more than any other season. So he's working his way towards being a receiving back. I don't think that Michael Carter is going to eat into Hall's workload very much at all. And I think, the Jets are preparing for Breece Hall to be their 3-down workhorse back, I think. Mm-hmm. And so I really do like him, especially when you can get him. His average ADP right now, according to this, is 51, which I cannot calculate at this point where you'd be depending on your league, but that's definitely later than you like. That's where you can get your wide receivers first, like you're saying, one of your magnificent 7 or whatever, mm-hmm. and then not worry about running back because you can get Breece Hall later on.
All right, so I feel like running back there's just so many, and wide receivers so many that we're if we haven't mentioned them, we're probably not very high on them.
I do like Travis Etienne. I think you mentioned that too. I do like him as well. Yep. I liked him last season before he got injured.
Of course. And like I said, we can't get to everybody, but if we haven't talked about him and you're wondering why, it's probably because we don't like him or we're not as high on him. We're talking about the people that at the average draft value that we are high on. Taylor, before we head to the wide receivers, a running back that if you're light, you went the no running back route that is so popular in the Godzilla Media League. Say you went with the Magnificent 7, loaded up on wide receiver, and you're sitting there with, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Leonard Fournette, and you're like, that doesn't really look that good, does it? A dart that could save your running back situation.
All right. So put me on the spot here. I think there's always certain backs that I'm hesitant on, but I think if you're in a pinch, you could definitely get and feel good about. And I'm going to go with Tony Pollard because it's so hard because they paid Zeke. Jerry Jones reinforced it that Zeke's the guy. But when you see them on the field, you see, Zeke looks slow. Tony Pollard looks fast, And Tony Pollard can receive so much better than Zeke, and he's a million times more efficient than Zeke. And so, as much as Jerry Jones liked to say that Zeke is the guy, yeah, sure, Zeke will be out there on first downs, maybe second downs sometimes. Tony Pollard is going to be out there on third down, maybe starting the next series for the first 2 runs. And I think he's so much more efficient with the touches that he does get. This is if you're in a pinch. He's not. I don't want him to be your running back 1 unless you have like 2 very elite wide receivers or 3 wide receivers that you're willing to start 1, 2 and put in your flex, and then you're working with Tony Pollard as your first run or your first running back you take. That's a guy you can live with if you have elite wide receivers on the other end. But yeah, no, he does have a lower ceiling, I think, just because Zeke is there, but his floor is pretty solid, and he can have some games where he's going to outscore Zeke tremendously.
I agree with you. I mean, I agree with you there. A guy that I'm going to go with is Dameon Pierce out of Houston. And probably a lot of you have never heard of said Dameon Pierce. I have heard of him a lot. If you're looking at the Houston Texans and reports coming out of camp, he has pretty much dominated first team touches. And really his only competition is Rex Burkhead, which, it's Rex Burkhead, and veteran Marlon Mack, who will give a chuckle to Taylor there.
I do like Marlon Mack.
He claims to be fully back from his 2020 Achilles injury, but the rookie Pierce has shown well in camp, and I have gotten comps from people that I trust. Some other people are psychotic about fantasy football, as I am, and as we are. Compare it to rookie Alvin Kamara. Nobody was looking at him. Was drafted in the 4th round. Was not at the time considered to be one of the starters. He played his way to the top of the depth chart, and he is going to run away with it. Now, is Houston a very good football team? No. But sometimes on bad football teams, you're going to give the young guys that you think is going to be there a long, long time a lot of looks. And he's a rookie. Dameon Pierce is a guy at ADP 122 to look at to maybe save your running back situation.
I'll throw one more at you. And again, you're going to roll your eyes at me. So save it. But Neiman Hines.
Oh, my Jesus Christ.
He is going to get a lot of the receiving looks.
I'm going to say, I'm going to put a new standard out there. Give me a late dart, not a Colt.
Well, if it works, it works. And if he goes off like I think he will, the Colts expect him to get, per reports, at least 60 receptions this year. He is a quick guy. He's super fast. So he's going to get a lot of yak yards. And I think that this offense is going to be geared toward getting the running backs involved, as Matt Ryan likes to do, i.e., Devonta Freeman and that whole offense that they had the year that Atlanta went to the Super Bowl it was predicated a lot on using the running backs. And I think that that's a big difference between how Carson Wentz ran the offense and how Matt Ryan ran the offense. I think it's just going to be a lot more shorter passes, but if you're a running back and you're that late in the draft, I'm not saying draft him high, but if he's there and you need a running back and you're desperate, I think he'll be good. I think he'll get a ton of receptions, and I think he'll get a few touchdowns here and there. So I think that his floor will be enough that you can take a flyer on him late if you need a running back. If you're in that situation, I don't know what you were doing in the beginning of your draft. You must have elite wide receivers. If you do at that point, I'm not saying rely on him to be your running back 1, but he can be, you running back 2 maybe, or your first guy off the bench if you need a flex fill-in. But I think he's going to have a good year. I just think he might even do some wide receiver work because, the Colts don't have the best wide receiver core in the world, but he's a great receiving back. That's what he does best.
Hey, if you're high on the Colts offense,
dude, I'll drop all Colts offense. I don't give a shit.
That's
just wait till we get to the wide receiver section.
That would be it's not really a secret here. Before we get to said wide receiver position, I do also want to bring up our good friends at Johnstone Supply in Troy. Summer is winding down, but you can feel the heat here in upstate New York still. If you want to stay cool all summer long indoors, call Johnstone Supply in Troy. Ask the team at Johnstone about their high-efficiency central AC systems with ductless mini splits. Goodman, Fujitsu, and Westinghouse are all in stock and at great prices. Need someone to help you install a new system? Johnstone Supply in Troy can help with that too. You have heard George on previous episodes of Getting There with Gaz and had a chance to learn his and Johnstone Supply's story. Now stop in and find out about their great service and products. Give Kev, James, or Bird a call and they can help put you in a cooler place this summer. To stay cool all summer long, call Johnstone Supply in Troy at 518-272-5922 or visit them at 2600 6th Ave in Troy. Get a new AC system today by calling 518-272-5922 or connecting online at johnstonesupply.com or on social media. Johnstone Supply NY. The wide receiver group, Taylor. And I mean, I've kind of been saying this all episode long, and I'm going to hammer down on it now. As covered when we mentioned running backs, the wide receivers are a big key to my draft plan this year. Huge. And I want to do whatever I can to lock in one of, as I coined it, the Magnificent Seven.
I've come up with 6 that I think are on your list. I don't know what the 7th one is.
I'm interested to hear who you think. I have Cooper Kupp.
Mm-hmm.
And
Obviously.
this is how I have them ranked. Kupp, Jefferson, Chase,
obviously,
Diggs,
mm-hmm.
Adams,
Yep,
CD,
yep,
and Debo.
Okay.
Who did you miss?
I didn't know if you were going to have CD in there.
I think CD. I mean, look, he's the only wide receiver that has a catch in a real NFL game on the roster right now. That's healthy. Michael Gallup's coming off a torn ACL. Outside of Dalton Schultz, CeeDee Lamb's the only wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys roster with an actual NFL catch. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's absolutely insane. So as I mentioned in the running back section, the best way to navigate the first 2 rounds is really to use this ADP to look at value and we've been saying it all episode long that you need to look at ADP to guess which players will be available to you in the second round, depending on where you pick. Then you kind of can use that information to make you, or to help make you, I should say, make those optimal picks for both rounds. As an example, if you have the 9th spot, CeeDee Lamb, if you think he's not going to be there in the second round, snag him there if the Magnificent Seven goes on a run, and then go wrap around and get like a Javonte Williams or an Aaron Jones. That's just as good as like a Joe Mixon or a Devontae Adams. There's not much difference, Taylor, to me, between a CeeDee Lamb, Javonte Williams, or an Aaron Jones, or a Devontae Adams and a Joe Mixon. Like, that's great value on both ends. It could go either way, in my opinion. So, I mean, when you look at ADP numbers, I mean, that's kind of what you're looking at. If you're drafting at the top of round 1, you're probably not going to get a crack at one of the Magnificent Seven, if you will. So that's a tough decision there that you have to make. Are you going with, let's just, for conversation's sake, Jonathan Taylor goes 1, but you're at 2. Are you taking McCaffrey, but are you so in love with Justin Jefferson this year that you're willing to take him number 2 overall? But if you do that, what are you looking at? I'm higher on Jefferson this year. You could take Kupp, but I'm higher on Jefferson. Mm-hmm. But if you do that, Kupp, Jefferson, whatever, same argument, right? If you do that, what are the running backs that you're going to see on the flippity flip? You know what I mean? So are you looking at, Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette? If that's the group that you really think is going to be there on the flip, now keep in mind, if you're drafting number 2 overall, you got your stud in Jefferson, you got to hope there's not a run in running backs. But if there is, you have a really, really hard decision to make because one of those stud wide receivers is probably there, or a higher wide receiver than you thought, and then you pick again in 3 picks. So it's tough. Do you go wide receiver, and then get the depth that we were talking about, the running back position? This is why I think wide receiver this year is so unbelievably more important than in years past. It's going to change a lot of leagues' drafts that have typically in the first round been running back heavy.
You see, I still think still think that it should be running back heavy in the first. That's how I usually go my rounds.
That's how I've always look. And I think I've always gone. That's how I've always gone. But I'm telling you,
I think it's probably still gonna be me. I don't think at number 2 I would ever go a Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp. I think for me, the top 5-ish running backs are more valuable than those top 5 receivers. Not that those top 5 receivers won't outscore them or keep up with them scoring wise. I do think they will. It's just, I think that there are wide receivers that you can get later on in 3, 4, 5, even like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think there's wide receivers there that you can get that will add so much value that you can't get at running back, because after the first, 12, 13, 14 running backs, after that, that's where you start dropping off. And we're talking about Neiman Hines, or guys like that. Like you're bringing up Pierce. I hope that someone takes the advice and drafts Pierce and he's good, but there's always the chance that someone takes your advice, drafts Pierce, and he's bad. And if that's what happens to you, or you pick another running back in that position and they just dud out, or they're stuck in a running back by committee type of situation, and that's running back hell, in my opinion. That's the worst.
And in my opinion, there's a hole in my plan. There's a hole in my plan if you're in the top, not 1. Like if you're in the top, like if you go from like 2 to 6, that's where the hole in my plan is. Because that kind of puts you in that no man's land of you don't know what running back is going to be there.
Well, that's yeah. That's where, like, if I'm at 6, 7, 8, 9, that's where I'm happily looking at your magnificent 7, and that's where I'm targeting them. Like, that's where I'm starting to target them is 6, 7, 8, 9. Like, if I'm in that range in the first pick, unless someone like a McCaffrey drops, people are scared of his injuries, and he drops there, I'm taking him there. I'm going to take him there. I'm going to take maybe a Najee Harris there. Maybe I don't take Najee Harris because I don't think he's going to do as well, and that's where I replace him with a Justin Jefferson, who I know is just, he's going to be a freaking stud. Or Jamar Chase. I do think that Jamar Chase is due for a bit of a regression. I think he had an absolutely ridiculous year last year, and I do think that he might come down just a bit. He's still a great wide receiver. I just think him and T. Higgins are both going to be pretty valuable, I think. And same with Joe Mixon. I think that offense is going to open up even more, but I just think Jamar Chase is going to see so many more double teams that he may not have been getting as readily in the first half of the season. Just because people didn't expect him to be as freaking good as he was. Game plans are going to be built around Jamar Chase at this point. So I just think that he might regress a little bit. Still going to be one of those magnificent 7, but I think I'm a little lower on the top 7 ranking that you had on him. But
so and I think this strategy applies to like the 12, but I don't think it applies to our league. Does that make sense?
No.
Like with the 16, it certainly does not apply.
It's so much different.
It's so much
in the first round.
If you don't, crazy. you could get your second round pick, and you could be picking from like Melvin Gordon.
To be fair, I don't have a real strategy for it. Like, not that I don't have a strategy, but
you just got to see how it goes. You really do.
So much different. You cannot predict anything about it. No. 16 teams in one round is so many. You don't know who's going to be stupid and take a quarterback maybe or something. It's like, who's going to take Josh Allen? Someone might. Someone might be like, oh, I'm picked 15, Josh Allen.
You can like your guys, but I mean, it's got to make sense. It's got to make sense.
12 is ideal for me. If you're looking for how many you should have in your league, 12 I think is the perfect number in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I think
10's too
16 is.
little, 8 is stupid, and
I
16
think
is so many.
I think 16 is asinine, but that was not my decision.
I mean, it's fun when you have people. But it's hard. It makes it
It's
very hard
it's hard,
because that means like round
and
7, 8,
and it
9,
makes
10,
this
you're looking at
championship belt mean a hell of a lot more.
like
But
9, 10, 11. You're by the end of
so
that draft, you're drafting like third stringers. It feels like.
it is.
I mean, you
So,
actually are.
but let's go. So, say you go running back in the first round, right? Say you go running back in the first round in a 12-team league. You're looking at the second round because I think the Magnificent Seven is probably going to go in the first round, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have a wide receiver. Are you willing to take a Tyreek Hill? Probably not. I'm to be honest with you, we don't talk about a lot of players to avoid on this episode because I mean we have so many people that we could like in just so little time. But Tyreek Hill, unless he like slips to me in the third round, which I know won't happen, somebody will take him. By all means, if you want to go and bank on Tua, getting him the ball, go for it. Not me. Nope.
Listen,
not me.
I do think he'll have a decent enough year because
He'll have a decent year. Yes, he's
I could
Tyreek
throw
Hill.
to him. I could throw to him and he would take it 60 yards and score a touchdown. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I don't want to bank on Tua, especially because I just see all these like Twitter videos of the training camp where it's like classic Tua throw and it's like a wobbly ass underthrown ball and it's just like, oh god, Tua.
Yeah, it's
but he's
bad.
the most accurate quarterback in the league, or that Tyreek Hill has ever played with. So.
Supposedly. Supposedly. I know there's a guy that you are targeting in the second round, and I'm not going to take him. So I am going to take another guy that I think not a lot of people are realizing could be there and is going to be a strong option. I'm going with Mike Evans. Keep in mind, Chris Godwin's coming off a torn ACL. And even when Godwin's back, he will have a big, big role. But Mike Evans, the markets are actually really not that high on him when you look at ADP. But I'm personally high on Mike Evans, and I haven't been in years past. He's not underrated, but when you're looking at a slam dunk, 1,000-yard, 10-plus touchdown season, that is what Mike Evans is. He will get you that. If you can get that as a solid, consistent piece for your wide receiver roster, yeah, sign me up for that. I purposely didn't take your guy because I know you want to talk about him, so go ahead.
Well, my guy, you might not even have to get him in the third round because by average draft position here in the live drafts, he's going towards the middle of the third round. And that's Michael Pittman. You can get Michael Pittman Jr. for value at the third round. And I think that's extreme value because even if you think that the Colts offense is going to be mediocre, the one thing that they're going to do, or that Matt Ryan is going to do, is going to feed his wide receiver one. You saw it last year with Cordell Patterson, who is, running back / wide receiver one, whatever you want to call him. And you've seen it with Julio year in and year out. He's going to pepper his number one wide receiver with a ton of targets. And Michael Pittman Jr. is just going to get a ton of looks. And I think he's going to get, he's going to have better balls thrown than some of the balls that Carson Wentz was throwing. I think he's a year more mature, a year better in this offense, a year more working with now Reggie Wayne, who's working with the Colts wide receiver core. I think that he's going to have a good year. He's going to get a ton of looks, and I think he's a clear wide receiver one. I mean, that's undisputable. Like, he is the wide receiver one. He has zero competition for that title. Like, Alec Pierce is a rookie, and other than that, Paris Campbell, I mean, he can't stay healthy, and even if he does stay healthy, he's definitely not better than Michael Pittman. And so, other than Neiman Hines, he's the only guy who's going to get the majority of the targets for this offense. And so, yeah, I think Michael Pittman Jr., even if you think that the Colts won't be good, which I think that they will be good, but even if you think they're going to be mediocre, Michael Pittman Jr. is just by virtue of being in the offense that's going to put up points at some point. He is going to be a guy who is probably going to be worth a second round pick, but you might be able to get him in the third round.
So we're at the point in the wide receiver group, like that 3 to 5 round range, depending on how your draft flow is. These guys could go in the 3rd round, could fall to the 5th round, depending. I'd be surprised if some of these guys do, but we're going to talk about him. A guy that I don't think is being talked about enough, and it's more because of the quarterback situation there, but it hasn't mattered, is DJ Moore. DJ Moore in Carolina is a stud, and another 150 plus targets should be coming again this year. Believe it or not, Baker is an upgrade from quarterback play to what he's had, which I know is not saying a lot, but at least Baker Mayfield can get the ball out there to DJ Moore. At ADP 35.6, he's a guy that I'm very intrigued on. I've had him in years past. I like him. He's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. I'm high on him. And I think if you're looking further down the list, another guy, before I hand it over to you for some flyers, Darnell Mooney in Chicago. Now, Chicago's offense is going to be a disaster, but Mooney was a top breakout guy for some last year, including me, and he basically crushed it. He was pretty damn good. And he's poised to dominate the targets without Allen Robinson in the picture. And he could be a lethal pick if Justin Fields can play up to his capabilities as an accurate downfield passer. I mean, look, let's be honest. The Bears are going to be behind a lot. Darnell Mooney's young, electric, fast, and was Justin Fields' top target last year. He's a guy that at ADP 53.5 intrigues me a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Darnell Mooney is one of the guys up there. I'm going to throw out, first of all, Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton are going like average draft position of 63 and 74.
Courtland Sutton, you'll hear it on the show. Courtland Sutton will be a top 10 wide receiver this year.
Yeah, I believe that.
Possibly top 5.
I mean, I'm also high on Jerry Jeudy as well. I think he's also an awesome wide receiver.
I think Sutton's more of the mold of DK for Russell Wilson, if that makes sense to you. Yeah. Either one,
but like Jerry Jeudy can be his Tyler Lockett, and so it can be perfect. They can have a tandem, and I mean, are we sitting here and thinking that Russell Wilson can't support 2,000-yard plus wide receivers? No, he absolutely can. And so both of those guys are going to be fantasy relevant. And I think that if you get either one of them, that's why these are the guys that I'm looking at where I go running back first to try to get that bell cow for sure, because then you can shore up on the back end with these wide receivers like Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, and then the two guys that I'm going to talk about next, Juju Smith-Schuster. He is going to be arguably the number one wide receiver.
We could all laugh, but he's wide receiver 1 for Patrick Mahomes.
On Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes. What happened last time a wide receiver was wide receiver 1? Yeah, it was Tyreek Hill. Yeah, he's probably the fastest player in the league.
I was going to say, Juju is not Tyreek, but...
No, he's not. No, for sure. But Juju Smith-Schuster is still technically wide receiver 1 with possibly the best quarterback in the league on one of the most high-powered offenses we've ever seen in this league. Yeah, is it going to have some growing pains? Probably. But is Juju Smith-Schuster still going to have a good season with Patrick Mahomes? Probably, because you know who's probably going to get a lot of attention? Travis Kelce, because everyone knows that Travis Kelce is going to be Patrick Mahomes' favorite target.
And he's matchup proof. I mean, Travis Kelce's matchup proof.
Of course he is, but they're still going to be forcing more to him, which means defending him with greater intensity than maybe Juju. So maybe Juju gets a one-on-one matchup, and can he, put the TikTok dancing down aside and outrun some guys? Maybe. And I think that he's going to be a guy who scores decently. And then the last one I wanted to mention is Rashad Bateman. Now, Rashad Bateman might be slipping into the wide receiver 1 role.
He is.
In Baltimore. And
he's clear wide receiver 1.
Yeah, because Marquise Brown is gone and Hollywood Brown is gone. So now you get Rashad Bateman. And hopefully that team all stays healthy and they have a more explosive offense. And Mark Andrews has to have a regression from last year because that was a ridiculous year he had. I would think that he wouldn't have a repeat year, maybe a little less and maybe a little more shifting over to Rashad Bateman, who is a great young player who was injured a lot of last year. So he didn't really get into the swing of things. But yeah, I think he's a guy who, again, these wide receivers here could be guys that have huge jumps at any point. So I just think that there's a lot of value in there that you can kind of go running back first, because after the top whatever running backs, I think it drops off significantly. Like I'm looking at 131 Robert Woods in Tennessee, who is now probably the number one wide receiver in Tennessee because Tennessee got rid of AJ Brown. And
coming off an ACL.
Yeah, but ACLs don't mean anything in today's sports. Like people recover from them pretty easily. Achilles, maybe that's a little more serious, but ACLs happens all the time. People come back good. It doesn't really matter as much. Also, wherever he ends up landing, Odell Beckham Jr. is also a guy you might want to look at. I
might not be ready till November, though.
Yeah, like I have no idea where he is. Just like keep.
Gotta remember that he tore his ACL in the Super Bowl, so he's 7 months, give or take, away.
He's
just
also not on a team,
right?
Like, so we don't. So we don't know. I'm just saying, like, come playoff time, if he's coming back, maybe think about him. But I'm excited to see where he goes. But I'm looking at like the bottom, and you got like Sky Moore, who's a rookie, Kansas City. Again, Juju might be the number one wide receiver, but who knows? Maybe Sky Moore is amazing and he steps into the wide receiver one role. So we really don't know about that one, but there's plenty of guys down below that are in the wide receiver pool that are good value.
So I've had a couple guys that I've liked. I didn't mention him earlier, but I wanted to mention Devontae Smith because he's kind of flying under the radar now that AJ Brown is there. I think AJ Brown is going to take a lot of attention, and Devontae is going to be able to kind of work underneath as the X receiver spot. And I think he's going to have some duds, but if you're looking for a depth add, I think Devontae Smith, who Heisman Trophy winner, was very good last year, is going to be a significant piece of an improved Eagles offense. If you're looking at a flyer, though, Taylor, I have two for you. Romeo Doubs out of Green Bay. Now, a lot of those people are like, who the hell is that? The reason I bring up Romeo Doubs is, the Packers don't have anybody to throw the football to. I mean, Alan Lazard is wide receiver one out in Green Bay. So Aaron Rodgers is going to be looking for that diamond in the rough. And you know that they will find that diamond in the rough. Reports out of Packers camp is that Doubs looks really, really good. I think he's this year's version of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he could be that kind of guy. Sneaky pick last summer. Seemed obviously mispriced, probably won't even be drafted in 12-team formats. But if you're looking at a dynasty type deal, or if you're looking for somebody that you are in a 12-team and you think you can stash somebody, this is a guy that I'd keep my eye on. Maybe not exactly draft him, but if you're looking at the waiver wire and you're kind of seeing things start to trend that way, don't be late on that train, because once he goes off, he's going to be gone, and you're going to wish you took your own advice and took him when you had the chance, because I think he's going to be that good.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard some whispers about Romeo Doubs in the in the Twitter sphere in the past couple of weeks. I mean, yeah, when you look at the wide receiver core of the Packers, the wide receiver one position is kind of up for grabs. Like, it's up to these guys, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, to prove it. To prove, like, Christian Watson's injured right now, but to prove that they can be the number one wide receiver, unless you think Alan Lazard is going to be that guy. But I truly don't.
No.
Aaron Rodgers has shown it himself that he doesn't trust Lazard as much as his number one receiver at the time, which was Adams. But Adams, in the throw that I'm referencing in the his playoff game that they lost, Adams was double teamed and Lazard had no one on him. So obviously, the wide receiver one in Green Bay is kind of up for grabs, and people still think that this team is going to make the playoffs, put up 12 plus wins. If they're going to do that, yeah, they're going to rely on AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones a lot, but they also have to find that wide receiver amongst them that Aaron Rodgers trusts. And he has had pretty high praise for Romeo Doubs in camp so far. Right. So if that means anything, Aaron Rodgers loves his guys. Like when he finds his guy, he makes them, like Jordy Nelson. And I mean, Devontae Adams came in and then he was his guy, and he's now the best wide receiver in football. But when Aaron Rodgers finds his guy, he goes to his guy. And so I do think that Romeo Doubs, if you have a roster spot you can throw him onto, I would do it if you can. Otherwise, yeah, I would take your approach of watching him very, very, very carefully. But that still might not even be fast enough. If he breaks out week 1 and he has a good week 1, someone's going to pounce on him. And if you're not in the good standing in your thing. So I don't know. End of draft, don't draft a defense. Draft him. Pick up a defense later on if you need to. But, like, you can just have him on your roster at least for the time being, because I don't think you need to draft necessarily a kicker or a defense at first. No. Obviously, you have to have one on your roster by time week 1 starts. But
the amount of times that I change my kicker and defense throughout the year, it's almost weekly.
Exactly.
It's almost weekly.
Unless you have like the Patriots defense from a couple of years ago where they were like literally like one of the top scoring like players.
The Vikings defense, the one year they were like scoring like 20 points a game.
Yeah. No, unless you have that, defense is streamable all the way, and kickers as well.
Believe it or not, Taylor, we're down to our last category, which is going to be the tight ends. And I know a lot of people have different philosophies when it comes to tight ends. And, a lot of people like to go big with one of the stud guys. And let me tell you, I did that last year, even though I typically don't do it. I did that last year and it paid off. I had Mark Andrews in a league. I had TJ Hawkinson. I had Travis Kelce in a league. I went big on tight ends and it paid off. I won 4 of my 5 leagues last year, people. I do know, believe it or not, what I'm talking about. This year, though, it's going to be tough because you're going to see, like I said, I'm not usually the one to invest, but, you look at Mark Andrews and he's a top 20 probably player in fantasy football because just, tight ends go quickly. Kelce is showing no signs of slowing down at age 33, but he's still 33. So taking Kelce early, I mean, someone's going to do it, but it's not going to be me this year. So count me out on Kelce. I'm just not going to do it unless for some reason he happens to slip till, I don't know, he falls to me in the 3rd round or something, which, look, is not going to happen. So I'm not even going to consider it. Mark Andrews is probably tight end 2. Massive production. I do expect it to go down this year, but again, they don't have that many targets, so it could still be productive. I'm looking at the 2nd and 3rd tier guys, Taylor, and TJ Hawkinson, I love to death, still love him. His ADP is 83. He is so heavily involved in that offense. Jared Goff checked down Charlie to him. I mean, the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of took away a little bit, but he's still going to be a consistent guy that you can kind of plug and forget. Year 2 of Kyle Pitts, I mean, that's the interesting conversation. Do keep in mind that he has Marcus Mariota and or Desmond Ridder throwing him the football. So I like the player, but not the situation. And at ADP 31-3, I could probably find my RB2 or my wide receiver 2 at that spot. So save me with the Kyle Pitts guy. Darren Waller is another guy, 30 years old, injury ravaged, has Devontae Adams in the picture now. I'm avoiding Darren Waller. You can go get him if you want. I'm avoiding him. Guys that I do like this year realistically at tight end, outside of the obvious of Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, and I already gave my piece for him. I'm going to start off with Dalton Schultz. And the reason why I like Dalton Schultz, he finished as tight end 12 in 11 of 17 games last year. To be honest with you, it's incredible. Travis Kelce was tight end 12 or better in 12 of 16 games last year, just for comparison. He has less target competition. Amari Cooper's gone. Michael Gallup's coming off a torn ACL. We just sat here and talked about why we love CeeDee Lamb. So it's the same reason why we could talk about Dalton Schultz. Dak Prescott has to find people to throw the football to. If it's not CeeDee Lamb, option 2 is likely Dalton Schultz. ADP 73, I think, is fair value price for that type of player right now with a lot of upside.
Yeah, I do think. I mean, Dalton Schultz, I've always been a big fan of him. I had him in a couple of leagues, and he kind of saved my position because I didn't have a great tight end. But I was able to grab Schultz, and he kind of saved it for me because he emerged as kind of the Dallas's main guy. And yeah, and he's a tight end machine or touchdown machine because they target him a lot in the red zone, and he works out. But for me, if I'm outside of those top guys, I mean, Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, like you said, like they're good, of course, but the problem is you have to pay a premium for them. You have to get them in possibly the second round. And, depending on, how many people in your league, our 16-team league, Kelce might go at the end of the first round. And Mark Andrews might go at the beginning of the second round, just like that. So, I mean, Darren Waller is a good tight end for sure. But like you said, Devontae Adams is coming in, so that lowers his value maybe a tiny bit because there is more targets to go, less targets to go around because a bunch of targets are going to go to him. So the person that I'm looking at is Zach Ertz. I like Ertz a lot. He was top 5 in efficiency in 2021 in tight end efficiency. He earned more targets per route than Travis Kelce. Christian Kirk is gone. Hopkins will miss 6 games. And he averaged 7.9 targets last year and 11.9 points when he got to the Cardinals. And both of those metrics would have been top 5. So I like Zach Ertz a lot this next year. I think you can get him at value because he's going right now pick 106, which I don't even know what round that is, but it's definitely lower than you would have to pay to get friggin' Kelce because he's average pick 22. So save on him if you can get Zach Ertz, snatch him up in a later round.
I didn't mention him. I should have mentioned him before I mentioned Dalton Schultz, but I do love Dallas Goedert as well this year. Goedert is, for the first time for the entire season, tight end 1. Has been Jalen Hurts' check down Charlie. And I've heard if it's not A.J. Brown, it's Dallas Goedert, who's been the focal point of the Eagles offense. So if you're looking for a guy that's probably not going to cost as much as the likes of Kelce, Andrews, Waller, Pitts, I think he's right before Dalton Schultz there, Dallas Goedert. Another guy that I like, I already mentioned T.J. Hockenson. I won't mention him again. I do like Dawson Knox. I like Dawson Knox for the Bills. ADP at 115, Taylor. He's a big-time athlete, former quarterback, really kind of broke out in the playoffs last year. You could see the chemistry between him and Josh Allen in the playoffs, like I mentioned, and he may never get a ton of targets, and he may not be volatile, but if you're looking at Dawson Knox and you're looking at value, he could be the king of blow-up fantasy games after posting 3 2-touchdown performances last year. This is a guy in a high-powered offense outside of really Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. He's probably option 3 for Josh Allen. He's going to be targeted in the red zone. Big athlete that can go up and get the ball, and he's proven to have chemistry with Josh Allen. That's definitely a guy that I'd consider.
I'll give you one more, and this guy's going to be he's a late guy because he's going pick 167 right now as ADP. And I'm not going to say his last name because I'm going to butcher it if I try. So I'm just going to call him Albert O. And that would be the Denver tight end. I think that he could be a big part of this offense just because this offense is going to be so high powered, as we mentioned before, with Russell Wilson coming to this Broncos team. And I do think that, in the red zone, a lot of times Russell Wilson will target his tight end. Now, certain tight ends haven't had success with him. Jimmy Graham was one of those where he went there and he was later in his career, and he didn't really have success with Russell Wilson. But other Will Dissly, I had him a couple years back, and he was amazing before he got injured, and I think his season was over. But he was a very solid tight end that Russell Wilson was throwing to, and he was those like 3, 4, 5 weeks where he was actually playing and healthy. Wilson went to him a lot, and I think that Alberto will do wonders for Denver, and he's a guy you can get super duper late. So if you just left your tight end position, you kind of ignored it, and you get back to it rounds 8, 9, 10, wherever that is. I'm not doing the math right now. You can snack him up, and whether he'll be a top 5 tight end, I can't predict that, but he could easily be top 10, especially because tight end wise, there's not a ton of competition for top 10 after the top 4 or 5.
I mean, really, my best advice for tight end is to target, like, once you're around the 70 pick mark, start targeting the second tier guys like a TJ Hawkinson. I mean, seriously, it is so worth it. I mean, I have been a ride or die in that like middle tier for tight end for years. Last year, like I said, I did take Mark Andrews. It made sense for me. It paid off. But
I mean, the 16 teams is different, I think.
16 teams is different.
Because there's a time where, like, maybe if there's a run on tight ends, you're absolutely screwed.
You might be in a great spot, and if you pass up the next time around, you might be screwed. You might be picking from the likes of, and it's not bad.
Travis Kelce goes and Mark Andrews goes, and then and Kyle Pitts goes, and then like a couple of rounds later, you pass up. Like,
don't be the guy rolling out Evan Ingram, okay?
And then,
don't be the guy rolling out Evan Ingram,
Waller,
playing
Schultz, Hawkinson, Goddard, and Ertz, and they all go, and then you're stuck there being like, do I take Hunter Henry? Do I take Noah Fant?
Don't be the guy with Hunter Henry, Noah Fant, Evan Ingram, and Cole Kmet, okay? Don't be that
Austin
guy.
Hooper.
Don't
be that guy.
I mean, some people are high on Hooper. I mean, they do. He is on the Titans, and they had. Hey, the targets for AJ Brown have to go somewhere. I get Ryan Tannehill's the quarterback, but I'm just saying the targets got to go somewhere.
Robert Woods and their rookie Traylon Burks, right?
Yep, Traylon Burks.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. But we'll see. This was fun. We had fun here. An hour and a half of fantasy football greatness. Obviously, if you're familiar with the show, we do have fantasy start, sit 'em, boom, bust advice throughout the season, waiver wire ads that you may like, and especially when we have our show on Tuesdays, that becomes very helpful for you guys. So hopefully as football season comes and we start settling into our schedules a little more, Tuesdays will be our shows. You'll get it Wednesday and waiver wires, boom. So we do fantasy basically from here on out. Now, the rest of this month is kind of looking like this. We got our college football playoff preview, or not playoff, college football preview coming up. We have our big NFL preview coming up, and that should lead us into the first rounds of football. And then once football hits, it's all football. We may throw in basketball if we feel it's appropriate. We may throw in some postseason baseball. We'll talk a little baseball, but this will really, during football season, is a football podcast. I will not sugarcoat that at all, really. And we have a lot of fun doing it. But we just went in depth, hopefully giving you guys some direction when it comes to drafting your leagues. Hopefully you take this time, take our podcast. It will be pinned on our Twitter account, which is at sports_podcast. It's been at the bottom of the screen this entire time. It will be pinned for the entire month of August and the beginning part of September until the NFL season ends. Share it, spread it, use it. When you're on the clock, play our podcast on repeat. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe I wouldn't mind
if that's what you want.
If that's how you want to take on your fantasy football draft this year, by all means, go for it. But no, listen to it, take the advice. I won 4 or 5 leagues last year. I don't mean to brag, but I do know what I'm talking about. Taylor knows what he's talking about as well. He has done well. He got screwed out of injuries last year. It is what it is. I won the inaugural Godzilla Media League, 16-team league.
You take risks. You draft Christian McCaffrey, the best fantasy player in the last 20 years, and this is what happens.
And you know what? It happens. Like you said, it happens.
But like I said, still draft him. I may not just because of my own feelings, but still draft him.
Still draft him. Maybe
I'll draft him.
You have to take risks to win fantasy football. You just have to take the right ones.
Don't draft scared.
Don't draft scared. Once you start second guessing your pick, you're not going to like that pick after the end of the draft, and you're going to wish you got the other guy. And 9 times out of 10, the other guy that you're going to initially pick was probably the better pick. Go with your gut, stick with your game plan, and that is probably the best advice I could give you. I know so many people that are just all over the place. Well, I'll worry about it that day. You're not going to win the league. You're not going to win the league. If you don't win the league in rounds 1 through 4. You win it in rounds 5 through 16.
But you can lose, I think.
You can lose it in rounds 1 through 4 if you pick Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce in the first 2 rounds.
Like if you pick a guy and he gets injured like that too, or if you pick a complete dud.
That's different. That's different though. You can't predict an injury, but
no, you can't predict an injury. But you can definitely lose it in the first round if you pick someone that doesn't work out at all. But you're not winning it either. You're winning it in the trenches with the depth you get.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck to everybody out there on your fantasy football drafts. We will keep everybody posted on our end about our drafts. Enjoy this podcast. Share it. Spread it out. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. You can find it pinned on our Twitter account. It will be shared consistently. Spread it around. Spread the good news. And help promote this product, especially with football season right here and around the corner as we squeeze out every last breath of summer. I'm excited for football, but I'm not ready to let go of summer. That's the frustrating part about it. But
I'm excited to go see my team play for the first time live. So I'm stoked.
That's right. You're going to the Colts game against the Chiefs. So
yep.
Good luck with that. Good luck with that. Chiefs 34, Colts 3. Early prediction.
You're insane. Chiefs are probably going to win, but the Colts will put them more than 3 points.
I don't know with Matt Ryan.
You're like 28 to 36, maybe.
Matt Ryan's putting up 28 points this year. Okay.
Oh my God! I will place a bet with you that Matt Ryan puts up 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns.
Oh, what's the bet? I'll take that.
I don't know. What are your terms? I don't know. I could pay you money if you want. I can buy you a nice dinner. I can buy you something or just give you straight up money. I don't care. 4,030.
I'll think about it. I have time before the season starts, but I'll take it.
You do.
4,030. I'm definitely taking it. I think I'm taking the under on both. But on that note, everybody enjoy your week and enjoy the fantasy football breakdowns. We will catch you next week with our college football playoff. For Taylor, I am Bryce. This was Sports with a Z and a T, presented by Godzilla Media, sponsored by Mohawk Honda, John Stowe Supply in Troy, and Saving Face Barbershop up in Saratoga Springs. Have a good week, everybody, and we will catch you later.